NTR.
Goedenavond. Welkom bij College Tour. Onze gast vanavond, speciaal ingevlogen voor dit programma, of beter gezegd, hij kwam met de trein vanuit Parijs, verkocht al meer dan 10 miljoen boeken. Hij is beroemd, hij is bekend, hij speelt zalen vol, bijvoorbeeld Carnegie Hall in New York of Carré in Amsterdam. En Time Magazine riep hem uit tot de beste humorist van Amerika. Jammer genoeg voor hem gebeurde dat 2 dagen voor 9/11, de aanslagen van september in 2001. Dus veel mensen is het ontgaan. Niettemin, iedereen kent zijn werk en zijn boeken staan altijd in de New York Times bestsellerlist. En daarom interview ik hier samen met de studenten in Felix Meritus in Amsterdam topauteur uit Amerika, David Sedaris. Welkom. You were fearing for this already, that this was going to happen, right?
Yep. Hallo allemaal.
When did you find out that you were a funny guy? Did it already happen when you were a student?
Oh, golly, I guess that was when it happened, when I was in school. I mean, I would just remember the teacher asking a question and raising my hand and thinking, I think this might work. You know what I mean? Like you'd have a joke answer in your head, and then 9 times out of 10, it wouldn't. But I liked that thrill of wondering if it was going to work or not. It was an excitement that I thought, I can live with this excitement. I go on tour, right? Twice a year in the United States. I go on lecture tours. So I read in front of an audience, and then I answer questions, and then I sign books, right? And I love signing books. And I know people, authors who sign books like that, next, but not me. I talk to people so much that they're like, well, let me let you go. Like they can't wait to get away from me. And so I ask them any question that I want. That's a good thing about going to another country.
Are you really interested in the personal lives of your readers? Why do you talk so much to them when they just come in for an autograph?
Because it's an opportunity to, especially when you're in another country, to learn things that you wouldn't. If you just ask the right question, you can walk away with a story. Or like in Australia, I went to Australia and it seemed expensive to me. And someone said, well, the salaries are high here. But I didn't know what that person meant by high. So I asked everybody in the line how much money they made. Mm-hmm. And they all told me. And it was startling. And I met a woman who was a teacher, a high school teacher. And then I said, can you sleep with your students? And she said, yeah, but they have to be 17, and you have to report the relationship to the school administration. Now, I just meant that as a joke. It never... In America, if you were a high school teacher and you slept with your student, you would never get out of jail. No. Like, you would be in jail. You would die in prison. And they're like, yeah, you can do it. They said, what's wrong with that? You know, they're 17, they're old enough to have sex. So it's fantastic. And here, I've often learned a lot here, just asking questions. Like
here in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam?
In the Netherlands. I was here a couple of years ago. And I said, what are you doing tomorrow? And they said, well, I got to get my guinea pig ready to take him to work. And I said, what are you talking about? Where do you work that you take your guinea pig? And they said, no, tomorrow's Animal Day. And then they explained Animal Day to me. And it was, you would never have Animal Day in the United States. Because one person in the school would be allergic to cats. You know, so you couldn't bring your cat to school. And the idea that you drag these animals, like, you drag your iguana to school. Your iguana doesn't want to go to school, but I absolutely love that.
So basically anything can be a story or an element of a story. And as I saw before the show, you have a little notebook. Are you carrying it now?
Oh, yeah. I always carry a notebook around, and then
And
know,
this is how it starts, or a story starts in here, in this notebook?
Well, I just got back from Sweden, right? And the Swedish government, I was out to dinner with some people one night, and I don't know how we got onto the subject of little girls' vaginas, but we did, all right? And then somebody said, well, you know, they said the Swedish government decided that vagina was such a big grown-up word for what a little girl has. So they put out, the government said, we got to find a better word. And so there was like a nationwide search for a better word for little girl's vagina. And then someone said, what's the official word for little girl's vagina in the United States? And I thought, are you crazy? Like, if the Obama administration said, we've got to find a better word for a little girl's vagina, he would just lose the election like that. For even using the word little girl's vagina, he would lose. So that was absolutely fascinating to me.
Somebody's cracking down already here.
But it doesn't make for a story,
Yeah, but
right? But so I'm trying to shape it into a story.
So what is in your notebook since this morning? Did you
Since this
write
morning?
anything down already?
I wrote your name.
Yeah.
I wrote, no, I just have notes. We arrived yesterday, and so I hate having my picture taken more than anything. And tell you the truth, I don't think I like photographers. You know, like as a people, I don't like photographers. And I don't like spending time with them, and I hate having my picture taken. So that makes it hard for my agent because people want a picture, right, when I go out on tour. So he sent me these pictures, and I knew I shouldn't have looked at them. And then I looked at them. And it's like you painted my face on a bullet. It's like, really, is my head shaped like that? On a wrinkly bullet. It's like you painted my head. And so I thought, oh my, I'm old. And I got up in the middle of the night, and I tripped over the chair, and I fell on the floor. And I thought, I'm old, and I'm on the floor. How did this happen to me? So that's been on my mind since I arrived here.
I think we have an idea now of what and who you are, but let's see. Old, depressed, you stumble in the night. God, what a miserable life you have, David Sedaris. In any case, I mean, you have fans all over the world, and there are many people in the Netherlands. Let's have a look.
Hij verkocht de laatste jaren over de hele wereld meer dan 10 miljoen boeken. Behoort dus bij de best verkopende schrijvers ter wereld, maar vooral in Amerika is zijn succes ongekend.
January 9th. In the grocery section of Sabo department store, I saw a whole chicken priced at the equivalent of $44. This seemed excessive until I went to another department store and saw 14 strawberries for $42. They were pretty big, but still. $42. You could almost buy a chicken for that.
Avrand Korstius, Paulien Cornelissen, Mark-Marie Huybrechts, Herman Brusselmans. Iedereen loopt weg met de Amerikaanse schrijver David Sedaris. Maar waarom?
Ja, dat is geen verklaring, ik moet erom lachen omdat ik erom moet lachen, maar dat is het gewoon. Het werkt gewoon direct op mijn lachspieren.
Mark-Marie Huybrechts zegt mij al jaren, lees het, want geestiger is er niet.
Het gaat over de meest banale dingen, over het doorprikken van een steenpuist.
Het gaat dus over verschrikkelijk iets, over schildpadden die opgegeten worden. En bij een andere schrijver zou je kunnen voorstellen dat dat dan dus een heel schrijnende scène wordt over verwaarloosde dieren.
Een misverstand waardoor jullie plotseling naakt in de wachtkamer van de dokter zit.
Maar hij maakt er zo'n gezellig gesprekje van dat het alleen maar grappiger wordt.
Hij is volgens mij iemand bij wie alles keihard binnenkomt. Zo erg dat hij bijvoorbeeld jarenlang niet op internet is gaan kijken, omdat hij bang was wat hij daar allemaal aan zou treffen. En dat vind ik wel heel bijzonder.
While this was being run, this little film, you were studying the ceiling of this place. Why? You don't like to look at yourself?
I can't look at myself. You know, if you look at yourself on TV, you'd never go on TV again. You know what I mean? Like, you'd think, you'd be aware maybe that you're slouching or what your hair looks like, and you'd never leave the house. But This is the same reason I don't want to look at pictures or anything. I just have this idea in my head that was formed like 40 years ago, and I just live with that.
Okay, let's see if there are any questions here. Here you are.
You're usually described as a humorist rather than a writer. Do you like to be seen as funny rather than, say, artistic or deep or intellectual? Or do you like to be the funny guy?
I think, you know, I think that anybody who... I would like to have it both ways, actually. I think when you write things that are funny, you never get the respect that you longed for, like as a child. So it helps to have things in the New Yorker. It's a magazine that I have things in the United States. So that kind of helps you get that sort of respect that you long for when you're writing about something that is completely banal, you know, which is just generally what it is that I write about. And I used to not like the term humorist because it called to mind like a middle-aged man with patches on his elbows. And now I'm a middle-aged man with patches on his elbows. I don't have them on these, but it's a term I grew into.
Your books are on the non-fiction shelf in the States and here as well. And there has been a little debate about, is he exaggerating the stories? Are they really true? You write a lot about your family members. What is it? Is it non-fiction or fiction?
I mean, to me, I feel like there's life. There's real life, right, which journalists would write about. And then there's a story of real life. And so I feel like what I do is make a story out of real life. I mean, the magazine that I write for, everything gets fact-checked.
The New Yorker, it's famous for that, fact-checking.
When I go on tour in the United States, I like to have something to give to teenagers, a little gift, right? So I used to give them aspirin. And so I went to Costco because they sold these little packets of aspirin. You could buy like 100 little packets, right? But they didn't have them. So I thought, okay, well, I'm here, I got to get something. It was a Sunday afternoon, I'm with my brother-in-law. I thought condoms. Perfect, because they're individually wrapped, and they're light, and they're easy to pack, and so I'll buy some condoms. So I'm with my brother-in-law in this big store, and we put a big box of condoms in our shopping cart, and that's all that's in our shopping cart. And I said, we got to get something else in this cart, you know what I mean? And whatever you put in your shopping cart with the big box of condoms just makes you look gayer. You know what I mean? So, like if you put olive oil in there, and he went and got a big box of strawberries, right? So, anyway, that was in the story. So they called my brother-in-law, and they said, did you go to Costco with David? Yes. Did you have a big box of condoms in your cart? Yes. But I'd written that it was a box of condoms the size of a cinder block, right? So then they called Costco and they said, I'm sorry, but the biggest box that they sell is 24, so that's not the size of a cinder block. But, you know, for my story, if you're in a small conservative town with your brother-in-law, who's 60, and all you have in your shopping cart is a box of condoms, it feels enormous, right? So that's a situation where I'm not a reporter. You gotta let me have this.
Yeah.
You have to let me be able to say that it's a box of cinder blocks. I mean, that it's a box of condoms the size of a cinder block.
Yeah.
You gotta give me this.
So you have 4 sisters and a brother?
Correct.
And there must be something in your DNA because one of your sisters, she's doing this kind of work. Let's have a look.
Well, hello to you. I'm the Tooth Fairy. Hello. Well, I'm Jerry Blank, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, I'm Amy Sedaris. Simple Times, crafts for poor people. It's how you can roast hot dogs using a common household rake. And you're going to insert it on top of this rake. Now, it looks like it's gonna, thank you. It looks like it's gonna be easy, but it really isn't. You can do as many as you can, and then just place it over the coals, and everything will start to get charred or, you know, burn everything, and that's how you know that your hot dog is ready. See you in the next chapter.
This is Amy Sedaris, your sister.
Yes.
She's an actor, a writer. What happened? What is in the drinking water of Raleigh in North Carolina? Because that's where you grew up, that all of you, or at least two of you, are funny. I don't know about the rest of your people.
Well, my brother, I mean, I always thought it came from being in a family with a lot of children. Because, you know, all we ever wanted was to make my mother laugh. So, but there were 6 of us, and so you got to be quick. You know, you got to get in there and do it quickly. You can't. I know people who are only children or who have one child, and the child will say, at school today, the teacher said to Brian, she said, you need to stop doing that. And Brian said, what? And she said, you need to stop. My mother would have said, I'm going to kill you if you don't shut up. Like, that is so boring. Like, you know. So we learned pretty quickly, like, if you're relating a conversation, you don't relate dialogue that's meaningless. You know what I mean? Like, you cut to the chase, and you do it quickly.
Questions? Please stand up.
Your stories, they're always about these funny, weird situations. Do you sometimes get into such situations on purpose for a story?
Magazines are always offering, right? One time a magazine called and said, we want you to stow away on a ship, right? And write about it. And I don't want to spend time in a barrel. You know what I mean? I just don't want to be in a barrel at sea. Like, a good life to me means not being in a barrel at sea. But if I'd said yes, and I'd be in that barrel, and I'd be thinking, what's funny about this? And plus, I'd have to write about it. And I want to write about things that I want to write about. So I don't. I mean, the closest I come is saying yes when a lot of other people might say no.
Okay.
You know, like, let's say somebody comes to your door and they say, can I come in and talk to you about Jesus? And a regular person would say no. And I would say, yeah, come on in.
I'm just still thinking about this story about giving little kids during your book signings condoms or aspirin. That in itself, this is where a story could start. But first of all, why would you give a little kid a condom during a book signing?
No, not a kid, a teenager.
Right, oh, a teenager.
Right. Yeah. So, no, I'm always so flattered when a teenager would come to one of my readings. And I'm talking about, like, let's say, you know, sometimes a 16-year-old will come with their parent. And I'm just so touched. And I don't know,
And you want to have them protected sex, then? So that's why.
Well, I just want to, like, I give away the shampoos and conditioners from my hotel. But, you know, they only give you so many, so you're out of those in no time.
Right, so you need condoms,
so,
yes.
Right, you need condoms. And then a woman I stopped giving the condoms out. This woman wrote me a letter, furious. Now, I think she was all wrong about this, but anyway, she wrote me a letter. She wrote a letter, and she sent it to my lecture agent, who called me. And he said, this woman claims that you met her daughter in Chicago, and you gave her a condom. And I said, yeah. And she said, and she said that you told her daughter that you didn't want her getting pregnant, and you didn't want to be responsible for anyone losing their virginity, so this was only for anal sex. And I said, yeah, that's what I said to her. But it was a joke, you know, like, it's just a joke. I mean, I didn't expect the girl, 17-year-old, to have anal sex. It's a joke. Sometimes I just think, really? You're in my audience? Like, in California one time, I was at UCLA, and I offered priority signing to smokers. You know, so I said, if you smoke cigarettes and you have them on you, you can come right to the front of the line, right? And so sometimes, like, the longest I've ever signed books is 10.5 hours.
Wow.
So when I offer priority signing, you're going to get in on it if you possibly can. Anyway, a man threatened to sue me because I was discriminating against non-smokers on California state property.
Yeah.
And that's like, oh, go home. Like, I don't... I don't want you in my audience.
Questions, please stand up.
What do you miss most about the US when you're in Europe, and what do you miss most about Europe when you're in the US?
I think having the internet has changed so much because you can watch, I can listen to National Public Radio. I used to miss National Public Radio, which is the network that I'm on in the United States. But now I can listen to it whenever I want, so I don't miss that. I miss grits and clams in a can. Like, you can't get those in France and in England. You can't get clams in a can. And I thought that was all I missed. But then I notice, I don't know what it's like in the Netherlands, but in the United States, if you're at a loss, you can always talk about money. You know, you can always say to somebody, how much did your house cost? And they're happy to tell you. How much did your car cost? How much is it costing you to send your child to school? How much was your watch? And you're just allowed to do that. And you can't really do that. You can do it in China. But that's the only other place that I've found where you can talk about money as freely. And I think we just do it in the United States. I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a boasting thing. It's just acceptable. I also find, with the American election coming, elections, at least in France and England, they seem to be quieter affairs. I mean, they're shorter. They don't last for years like they do in the United States. But I'm getting ready. I'm leaving for the United States in a few weeks, and I love being there during an election because I go all across the country, and I see people with bumper stickers, and I see people with signs in their front yard, and you would never do that in France. Never do that. I saw a bumper sticker in the United States a couple months ago that said, Obama, worst president ever. And I thought, really? Like, what did he do that made him the worst president ever? And my friend Ted lives in Arizona, which is a very conservative state, and he has an Obama sticker on his car. And he came, and it's always something. He'll come out of the grocery store, and somebody will be waiting by his car, tapping their foot to give him a hard time. And he found feces smeared all over his bumper sticker when he came out of the grocery store a few weeks ago. But
what does it say? Do you know, the bumper sticker?
It just said Obama. But I like that. I like how willing people are to identify themselves that way.
You could say it's a very passionate people who do this.
Yeah, but I like that everyone has not everyone, but a lot of people have a button or a pin on, and it just sort of says, I'm like you, or I'm an asshole. Like it seems to say one of those two. Yeah. Basically, yeah, it says one of those two things to everyone.
Who do you think of the two, Mitt Romney or Barack Obama, is the most sexiest man?
Sexy. I don't think of either of them as sexy. I mean, I think it was David Letterman who said that Mitt Romney looks like, when you buy a picture frame and there's a picture of the guy already in the frame? Yeah. That's who Mitt Romney looks like. I mean, or an underwear model. One of those older, in JCPenney's catalog, older, handsome fella who would be modeling pajamas and underwear and slacks. He's a nice looking man. He looks like someone who would play the president in a made-for-TV movie, doesn't he?
Yeah. So you could do it. Let's have a look at both of them, because this is an interesting week. We have the debates this week, and it's getting to a climax now, running up to the 6th of November when it's election day. Mitt Romney and Obama.
Good evening. I understand that there's a video that's been on the internet.
The 47% who are with him, who are dependent upon government, who believe that they are victims, who believe that government has a responsibility to care for them, who believe that they're entitled to health care, to food, to housing, to you name it. And they will vote for this president no matter what.
I don't know what he was referring to, but I can tell you this. They are hardworking family people who care deeply about this country, and My expectation is that if you want to be president, you got to work for everybody, not just for some. And
Are you politically engaged? Are you flying back to the States to vote, or are you going to go to an embassy to
I
do that?
vote absentee, and so I have our absentee ballots arrived in London a few days ago.
So what's your take on it right now? Who's going to win? Who's doing best? Who's best suited for the job?
Everything points to Obama winning, but I'm just afraid that people are going to get complacent and say, well, he's going to win, so I don't need to go to the polls. I don't need to vote. So I'm a little bit worried about that. And also in the United States, because Mitt Romney's been having a few bad weeks, you have to worry that just for no other reason than people are tired of the same old headlines. So then the next few weeks it's going to be Romney rebounds. And whether he is or not, whether it just makes a more interesting narrative.
He's still a serious candidate. He could still win, you think?
Yeah, he could win. It's not impossible that he would win. I mean, it's certainly not what I want for him to win. I mean, I think the worst idea is that he's just sort of a puppet for people who are just terribly conservative people who just want to stick their hand up his ass and turn him into their puppet. And he doesn't seem to be much of a person. Do you know what I mean? Like he'll be whoever you want him to be. He doesn't seem to be a very substantial person to me.
Questions? Please stand up. Here for him.
In your opinion, to what extent do satirical shows like The Daily Show or The Colbert Report influence the outcome of the general elections?
And so many young people in the United States get their news from Jon Stewart, from The Daily Show, or from Stephen Colbert's show. That's how they know what's going on in the world. So, and on the same token, a lot of people, like my dad, gets all of his news from Fox.
He's a Republican.
Oh, yeah. And he lives in that bubble. He lives in that bubble of Republican talk radio and then Republican television network. And you couldn't convince him otherwise. During the debate tonight, if Mitt Romney said, actually, I'm evil, and I was sent here from another planet to destroy your civilization, if my father would still vote for him. You know what I mean? Because Fox News would say, yes, he's evil, and yes, he's from another planet, and he's here to destroy life as we know it, but in a good way. Yeah. My father you would not be able to. But I feel like Jon Stewart is more, like he'll make fun of Democrats as well. I mean, I think his job is to make fun of hypocrisy.
Which position would be great for you? I mean, Secretary of State, Senator, President. What would you be looking for if going into politics?
Something to do with cleaning. So maybe the environment. I saw last night, who watches TV at 11 o'clock? Last night, me. When I'm in another country, I like to turn the TV on because I always expect to see naked people. When I'm in another country. Like I was in Germany once and I turned the TV on and there was just a Sunday night and it's just a couple having sex, right? On Sunday night, and it's not cable. And then I changed to the next channel and it snowed out. Like, what are they doing here that they weren't doing on that last channel for free? Like, what on earth could be going on here? But anyway, last night I turned the TV and there was an article, a little story about space junk. And apparently, outside of Earth, I mean, in space, it's just trash and it's just garbage. It's junked satellites. And it's filthy. And so they're trying to think of a way to clean it up.
And that would be your first goal as being the secretary?
I didn't know it was there, but now that I do, that's my first priority, is to clean up.
Since you're talking about sex as well and watching naked people, I was wondering if you could read this little passage from this book. since it's a very famous, at least successful colleague of yours. You know the book, right?
I've heard of it.
Yeah? It's 50 Shades of Grey, and all women in the world are reading it now, and men.
Okay.
And we looked for a passage that we thought you would like.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. He reaches between my legs and pulls on the blue string. What? He gently takes my tampon out and tosses it into the nearby toilet. Holy fuck, sweet mother of all. Jeez. And then he's inside me. Skin against skin. Moving slowly at first, easily, testing me, pushing me, oh my. I grip on the sill, panting, forcing myself back on it, feeling him inside me. Oh, the sweet agony, his hands clasp on my hips. He sets a punishing rhythm, in, out, and he reaches around and finds my clitoris massaging me. Oh, geez. I can feel myself quicken. That's right, baby, he rasps as he grinds into me, angling his hips, and it's enough to send me flying high. Whoa, and I come. Loudly, gripping for dear life onto the sink as I spiral down through my orgasm, everything spinning and clenching at once. He follows, clasping me tightly, his front on my back as he climaxes and calls my name like it's a litany or a prayer. Oh, Anna. His breathing is ragged in my ear, in perfect synergy with mine. Oh, baby, will I ever get enough of you, he whispers. Really? That's what's in this book? I'd heard about this, you know, everyone's heard about this book, but I'd never seen this. I mean, I hadn't. He reaches between my legs and pulls on the blue string. What? And gently takes my tampon out. See, that's something I don't have any experience with women that way. I guess you would have to take the tampon out, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Like if it was me writing it, I would not have him throw the tampon into the wastebasket. I would think, where else could he throw the tampon? That during the whole rest of that scene, you'd be thinking, wait a minute, what about the tampon? Get back. You know, throwing it out the window and it would land on somebody, or...
Please stand up.
I was wondering, if you hadn't become a writer, how would you have earned your money, you think?
I always thought I would just have a miserable job and then come home and write. And my miserable jobs were always physical jobs, because you don't want to sit down all day and then come home and sit down more and write. So I'd be on my feet all day, and then I'd come home and it was good to sit down, and I'd just sit down in front of the typewriter. You know, so I would come home and work. And it never occurred to me that I could that it would be my livelihood. Never occurred to me.
It's a little bit more than just a living, right? You're a rich man.
Yeah. But like my first...
How much do you earn per year? Since you're in the US, you're so comfortable talking about salaries.
I know, and I always, if I would ask me that question. That's the first question I would ask me. But I wouldn't answer it. But it's the first question I'd ask me. But
what's the answer? You're not going to tell us, right? The fortunes that you have made.
No.
No. 2 questions here.
I think it's safe to say that the majority of your writing is anecdotal. You write about things based on your family or things that have happened to you. And I worked as a bookseller for many years, and we always highly anticipated your work coming out. And we were always satisfied, and it was the same sort of things. And then all of a sudden we had Squirrel Seeks Chipmunk, which seemed like a real departure from what you'd done before. And I'd always wondered what precipitated that. And if you could just talk about that.
Somebody gave me an audio book of South African folk tales, and they all involved animals. And I was very excited, you know, because I love an audio book. And then it was just so lame. It was like the giraffe and the hyena. The giraffe and the hyena fell in love and got married, and on their wedding night, the hyena ripped the giraffe's throat out. So be careful who you marry. And I thought, I can do better than that. So I wrote a story about a cat and a baboon. And then I went on tour and I read it out loud, and it just felt good to me. And so then I would write 2 or 3 a year, and I thought, oh, maybe one day I'll have enough for a book. But I don't read anything about myself, right? So I don't read interviews. I certainly don't read reviews. But I think maybe a lot of people didn't like that book because a lot of people said, you know, when I would be signing books, and they were polite people, they would say, why did you do this? You know, so, and I think that was their way of saying, like, I wish you hadn't. But I think maybe people were just used to, I think when I say I, people want it to be me and not a German Shepherd.
Since you are talking about the books, the work, I mean, most of you have probably heard a reading. Would it be okay if we can hear your voice and a story of yours? Because we selected something.
Okay.
Yeah. We're almost in Sinterklaas season, Santa Claus. And there is this story that you wrote years ago, and your publisher in the Netherlands told me that it's 6 to 8 black men, that you really never have done it in the Netherlands for a live audience. In the States, it's a big success, this story. And we thought, let's give David Sedaris a good chair. We should stand up so they can change the whole thing here. We thought you need a comfortable chair. Please take a seat.
Okay.
Feel the chair. We took a piece from that story, and I hope you can
Oh, wow.
read
Okay.
it from here.
Sure.
Here you go.
Let's see.
6 to 8 black men. David Sedaris.
Okay. In France and Germany, gifts are exchanged on Christmas Eve, while in Holland, the children receive presents on December 5th in celebration of St. Nicholas Day. It sounded sort of quaint until I spoke to a man named Oscar who filled me in on a few of the details as we walked from my hotel to the Amsterdam train station. Unlike the jolly obese American Santa, St. Nicholas is painfully thin and dresses not unlike the Pope, topping his robes with a tall hat resembling an embroidered tea cozy. The outfit, I was told, is a carryover from his former career when he served as the Bishop of Turkey. One doesn't want to be too much of a cultural chauvinist, but this seemed completely wrong to me. For starters, Santa didn't used to do anything. He's not retired, and more important, he has nothing to do with Turkey. The climate's all wrong, and people wouldn't appreciate him. While our Santa flies in on a sled, St. Nicholas arrives by boat and then transfers to a white horse. The event is televised, and great crowds gather at the waterfront to greet him. Is it just him alone, I asked, or does he come with some backup? Oscar's English was close to perfect, but he seemed thrown by a term normally reserved for police reinforcement. Helpers, I said. Does he have any elves? Maybe I'm just overly sensitive, but I couldn't help but feel personally insulted when Oscar denounced the very idea as grotesque and unrealistic. Elves, he said, they're just so silly. The words silly and unrealistic were redefined when I learned that St. Nicholas travels with what was consistently described as 6 to 8 black men. I asked several Dutch people to narrow it down, but none of them could give me an exact number. It was always 6 to 8, which seems strange, seeing as they've had hundreds of years to get a decent count. The 6 to 8 black men were characterized as personal slaves until the mid-50s, when the political climate changed, and it was decided that instead of being slaves, they were just good friends. I think history has proven that something usually comes between slavery and friendship. A period of time marked not by cookies and quiet times beside the fire, but by bloodshed and mutual hostility. They have such violence in Holland, but rather than duking it out amongst themselves, Santa and his former slaves decided to take it out on the public. In the early years, if a child was naughty, St. Nicholas and the 6 to 8 black men would beat him with what Oscar described as the small branch of a tree. A switch? Yes, he said, that's it. They'd kick him and beat him with the switch. Then, if the youngster was really bad, they'd put him in a sack and take him back to Spain. St. Nicholas would kick you? Well, not anymore, Oscar said. Now he just pretends to kick you. And the 6 to 8 black men? Them too. He considered this to be progressive, but in a way, I think it's almost more perverse than the original punishment. I'm going to hurt you, but not really. How many times have we fallen for that line? The fake slap invariably makes contact, adding the elements of shock and betrayal to what had previously been plain old-fashioned fear. What kind of Santa spends his time pretending to kick people before stuffing them into a canvas sack? Then, of course, you've got the 6 to 8 former slaves who could potentially go off at any moment. This, I think, is the greatest difference between us and the Dutch. While a certain segment of our population might be perfectly happy with the arrangement, if you told the average white American that 6 to 8 nameless black men would be sneaking into his house in the middle of the night, he would barricade the doors and arm himself with whatever he could get his hands on. 6 to 8, did you say? Our Christmas story remains relatively simple. Santa lives with his wife in a remote polar village and spends one night a year traveling around the world. If you're bad, he leaves you coal. If you're good and live in America, he'll give you just about anything you want. We tell our children to be good and send them off to bed where they lie awake, anticipating their great bounty. A Dutch parent has a decidedly hairier story to relate, telling his children, listen, you might want to pack a few of your things together before you go to bed. The former Bishop of Turkey will be coming tonight, along with 6 to 8 black men. They might put some candy in your shoes. They might stuff you into a sack and take you to Spain, or they might just pretend to kick you. We don't know for sure, but we want you to be prepared. This is the reward for living in Holland. As a child, you get to hear this story, and as an adult, you get to turn around and repeat it. As an added bonus, the government has thrown in legalized drugs and prostitution. So what's not to love about being Dutch? That is exactly the kind of story I hope to learn when I'm in another country. The reason that story works in the United States is the audience is there thinking, that is ridiculous. Like, everybody knows that Santa lives at the North Pole and comes down your chimney with a team of reindeer. Everybody knows that.
Do you get any questions after reading this in Carnegie Hall or whatever?
Oh, no one believes me. I mean, no one ever, they just thought that I made it all up.
It's a great story. We're almost coming to the end of this show. Our last question is always, what is the best advice you can give to the students here and the people who are watching this show from your life experience as a writer?
My advice is always write thank you letters. Write thank you letters. Like if somebody gives you a good present, write them a thank you letter, because then they're going to want to give you a better present the next time. They really are. So many people don't write thank you letters. You would not believe how far a thank you letter gets you. When I go on tour in the United States, I write a thank you letter to every bookstore, and I write down the people's names who work in the bookstore while I'm there. I write one to everybody who interviews me. And you just wouldn't, I mean, it makes such a difference. And so many people don't do it, or they do it with an email, and it's just not the same thing. Like, if you're going to send a bullshit thank you letter, then probably don't bother. You know what I mean? The kind that someone's going to get, and they're just going to throw it away. You know, like, that's like sometimes somebody will write me with a question, and they'll say, I look forward to, oh, thank you in advance for your response. I hate it when they do that, because you were going to respond anyway, but now they're acting like you're only responding because I told you to respond. And it's true. People want to give things to people who are grateful. That's who you want to give something to.
David Sedaris. Before we let you go, I'm going to announce the guests that are coming up in the show, because we have two new names to add to our list. Deze man kunnen jullie volgende week zien en beter nog een vraag stellen in College Tour.
Ik ben Willem Holleder. Binnenkort zit ik in College Tour. En ik zie er naar uit om de vragen van alle studenten te beantwoorden.
We zoeken juristen, maar ook mensen die op de politieacademie zitten, rechters in opleiding, officieren van justitie in opleiding. Meld je aan, adres hieronder in beeld, collegetour.ntr.nl, om een vraag te stellen of meerdere vragen te stellen aan Willem Holleder. Meld je ook aan als je vragen wil stellen aan Sonja Barend. En meld je ook aan als je onze laatste gast van deze reeks een vraag wil stellen, de Amerikaanse actrice Susan Sarandon. Kortom, een heleboel mensen waar je je voor kunt aanmelden. David Sedaris, thank you so much for being here. Jullie voor al je mooie vragen en u voor het kijken thuis. Tot de volgende keer bij College Tour. Ja.